Bulldogs. Today we're going to look at how does the amount of daylight hours within a single hemisphere differ during the year. So we're going to use the data in the data tables down here to create another triple line graph with 3 different lines that represent the number of daylight hours at different times of the year. And then afterwards we're going to look at the graph, we're going to see what kind of patterns you notice and what differences you notice. So just like with DIY4, we're making a triple line graph. So down here underneath the graph we've got our legend or our color key, so you need to come over here, and I like the highlighter because it has kind of a thicker line and it's easier to navigate. So I'm going to choose blue to be my line for Alaska, and then I'm going to choose green for my line to represent Arlington, and then I'm going to choose red for my line for Quito, Ecuador. Okay. So with my blue line for Alaska, it's at a latitude of 57 degrees, meaning that it's very far north. It's far away from the equator. Remember, the equator is 0 degrees latitude. So as we go from Quito, Ecuador, that's right on the equator at 0 degrees. Then here in Arlington, we have a latitude of 38 degrees. And then if you go all the way up to Alaska, it's 57 degrees. So I'm going to take all of these points over here in my first data table, and I'm going to plot them on the graph. So if you notice, for January in Alaska, there's 0 number of daylight hours. So for January, I'm going to put a little dot down here at 0. For February, there's 8 hours and 20 minutes. So I'm going to go to February, and I'm going to follow my line up to a little bit above the 8 and plot my dot there. For March, nearly 12.5 hours. So I'm going to come up here and plot my dot for March. I'm going to pause the video and continue plotting these dots. You do the same thing, pause your video, finish plotting the dots for Alaska, and then we'll pick up where we left off. Okay guys, so I've plotted the rest of my dots from the data table for Alaska, and now to complete my line, I'm going to, as best I can, connect these dots so I can see patterns. I can see how it transitions from month to month. Now if you notice with Alaska, it starts out in January, there's 0 number of daylight hours. That means that the sun does not come out at all, and the number of daylight hours is going to increase pretty drastically until we get to May. And then if you notice, for May, June, and July, all 3 of those months have 24 hours of daylight. That means the sun never sets. The sun is always out. And then again, we've got our drastic decrease in our number of daylight hours until we get to November. So November, December, and January, there's 0 hours of daylight at this particular latitude in Alaska. So again, I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to make my lines for Arlington and Quito, and then we'll compare the lines and see what you find out. So you pause the video as well, make your lines, and then we'll compare it and move on. Alright guys, here's my points for Arlington, and as I connect them, you can see that the change in the daylight hours isn't nearly as drastic as it is in Alaska. We still get our longer daytime hours in the summer and our shorter daytime hours in the winter. So now I'm going to do my final line for Quito, Ecuador. So I'm going to get my red. And if you look at the data table, what pattern do you notice with Quito, Ecuador? You're right. All of the months have exactly 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night. So I'm going to go all the way across my graph, plotting my points at 12 hours. And then you guessed it, as I connect all the dots, it should be a straight line all the way across. Because we're at 0 degrees latitude, we're on the equator, it's going to get that equal amount of daylight the entire year. So now that you have your triple line graph showing the number of daylight hours at different areas in the northern hemisphere, we're going to look at slide 2, and you're going to use these questions to help you identify patterns and make connections from your completed graph. You can choose to either write these answers to the questions in your journal, or if you like to keep things digital, you can come up to here where it says expand frame bar, and then for this slide you can click on these 3 little dots up here and you can duplicate the slide. So now when you go to slide 3. You can see up here I'm on slide 3 of 3. Now I can go to the post-it notes. I can read the questions, and if I want to, I can just continue on that same post-it, and I can, type out my answer, or you can completely erase the question and type out your answer. That's up to you, how you want to answer these questions. And then based on your results, how would you explain how the location and tilt of the Earth affects the length of day? So for this question, you can just type in your answer into this text box down at the bottom. I will have the key to these questions posted tomorrow, so you can check your answers. If you're confused or need any help, just feel free to reach out, and I'll be happy to help you in any way that I can. Bye, Bulldogs.